A fog-draped night over the Atlantic. The sea lies still, untouched by wind. In the distance, two giants, Andrea Doria and Stockholm, glide silently toward each other through the mist. A distant foghorn echoes across the water, blending with the soft hiss of waves. Everything feels calm, almost too calm, just moments before disaster. As dawn faded into evening on July 25, 1956, the SS Andrea Doria glided through the Atlantic, a floating palace of Italian elegance, its halls glittering with chandeliers and the laughter of nearly 700 passengers. She was the pride of post-war Italy, a symbol of progress and prestige. Far to the north, cutting through the same mist, the MS Stockholm, smaller, younger, built for endurance rather than luxury, charted her course home to New York. On her bridge, officers studied the radar, their screens pulsing faintly through the haze. Two ships, two worlds, one built for beauty, the other for duty, now sailed unknowingly toward the same point in the endless sea. Wind whispered against their hulls, waves brushed steel, and on every deck life went on as if time itself held its breath. The sea, vast and indifferent, watched in silence as destiny began to draw its invisible line between them.
Ship's log, stardate 47634.4. We've arrived at the designated coordinates.
The fog had thickened into a white wall, swallowing the horizon and erasing the line between sea and sky. On the Andrea Doria, Captain Piero Calamai stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the radar screen glowing pale green in the darkness. A faint blip pulsed at the edge, another vessel somewhere ahead, its position uncertain. "Maintain course," he ordered quietly. The ship moved forward at 21 knots, slicing through the mist with the confidence of a liner that had crossed the Atlantic many times before. Far across the fog, on the Stockholm, young officer 3rd Mate Karstens Johansen leaned over his own radar. His vessel, smaller but sturdy, carried only a fraction of the passengers, mostly crew and a handful of travelers bound for home. Their radar showed a target 2, steady and bright. But something was wrong. The bearing of the other ship seemed to drift, not to the right as expected but left, implying they were passing safely port to port. Yet on the Andrea Doria, the Italian crew read the opposite, starboard to starboard. On their screens, the echoes did not align. That simple misunderstanding, one of interpretation of instruments of assumptions, was quietly setting the stage for disaster. Inside the Andrea Doria's grand dining room, waiters cleared fine china and passengers laughed over coffee. A violinist played softly, his melody echoing through the hall as if nothing in the world could disturb it. In the children's playroom, parents tucked their kids into bunks, the hum of the engines a lullaby. On the open deck above, a few passengers lingered by the rail, staring into the fog, unaware that only a few miles away another ship was heading straight toward them. Cut to the Stockholm's bridge, a stark contrast. Metal walls, cold instruments, the rhythmic ping of sonar. Captain Gunnar Nordenson joined his young officer, peering at the dim screen. "She's close," Johansen murmured, "but her course, I can't tell if she's turning." Nordenson frowned. "We keep right, maintain speed." They believed the other vessel would do the same. Back on the Andrea Doria, the atmosphere had shifted. The foghorn moaned again, long and low, a sound that vibrated through steel and bone. Calamai gave an order: reduce speed, turn slightly to port. His intention, to widen the passing distance. But the fog distorted perception. Both ships believed they were correcting the same way. Both believed the other would clear. The radar pulses grew stronger. Each blip, each ping was a heartbeat counting down to impact. Inside the radio room, operators exchanged faint signals. Static filled the air. Voices overlapped, English, Italian, Swedish, broken by interference. Visibility 200 meters. Can you confirm your heading? Then silence. Only the hiss of the ether remained. Cross cut between decks. On Andrea Doria, a steward polishes silver trays as lights flicker briefly from the power drawer of the foghorn. On Stockholm, a lookout squints into the void, seeing nothing but the ghostly dance of mist. A wave slaps hard against the bow, a momentary vibration runs through the floor. Calamai glances at his watch. 10:55 p.m. The hum of the engines deepens. In the control room, pressure gauges tremble faintly. The sea grows restless. A sudden glimmer, faint and fleeting, appears dead ahead on Stockholm's starboard side, two bright points of light, low and distant. The lookout leans forward. "Ship ahead," he shouts. Johansen reacts instantly, adjusting course starboard. "We'll pass safely," he assures. But in the Andrea Doria's wheelhouse, the same sight triggers the opposite reaction. "She's turning toward us," Calamai shouts. "Hard to port now." The two ships, massive, blind in the fog, were locked in a fatal dance neither could escape. The Andrea Doria's deck tilted slightly as she began her slow left turn. The Stockholm's bow carved through the haze, pushing water aside with unstoppable force. The gap between them closed from miles to minutes, from minutes to seconds. On Andrea Doria's promenade, passengers paused, hearing a deep rumble beyond the fog, a sound like thunder under the sea. Some turned toward it, squinting into the mist. Nothing, only whiteness. On Stockholm, the captain's voice was tight, hard to starboard. The wheel spun, engines reversed, the hull groaned under the strain. Distance, less than a mile. The air grew electric. The sound of the radar ping quickened, tick, 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 like a heartbeat losing rhythm. Back on Andrea Doria, crewmen scrambled. All engines reversed, Calamai commanded, his hand slamming the telegraph. But inertia ruled the sea. The liner's 29,000 tons moved too slow, too late. Both vessels now emerged from the fog, their outlines forming at the last possible moment, vast shadows cutting through the whiteness. Two worlds, luxury and labor, beauty and brute steel, were about to meet in one blinding instant. A flash of recognition, the realization of what was coming, swept both bridges simultaneously. No more time for orders, only the sea between them. And in the hum of machines and the endless white, destiny tightened its grip. Out of the white void, the bow of the Stockholm suddenly emerged, a black wall of iron charging through the fog like a phantom. On the Andrea Doria's bridge, someone screamed hard to port, but it was too late. At 11:10 p.m., the ocean exploded. The Stockholm's reinforced icebreaker bow tore through the side of the Andrea Doria like a blade slicing open steel as if it were paper. A thunderous metallic shriek echoed across the waves, followed by the deep roar of rushing water. The decks trembled, glass shattered. Passengers were thrown from their chairs as chandeliers swung violently above. For 5 seconds, no voice, no narration, only chaos. The sound of tearing metal, screams, the groan of a dying ship. On the Andrea Doria, cabin lights flickered, then went dark. In the sudden blackness, the smell of oil and salt filled the corridors. Steam hissed from broken pipes. Water poured through the gaping wound. A hole more than 40 feet wide, flooding compartments faster than anyone could react. Down below, crew members stumbled through knee-deep water, shouting orders drowned by the roar of the sea. Above deck, lifeboats swayed violently as waves crashed over the rails. Panic spread like fire. Mothers clutched children. Men ran through smoke and spray, searching for exits that no longer existed. On the Stockholm, the crew froze in disbelief. Their bow was buried deep inside the other ship's hull. When they reversed engines, a piece of Andrea Doria's steel skin tore free with a final scream, leaving a wound that would never close. The Stockholm's forward deck was mangled, its frame dripping with seawater and fragments of shattered paint. But she remained afloat. Back aboard the Italian liner, Captain Calamai steadied himself, gripping the railing of the darkened bridge. The deck was already listing to starboard, the tilt growing steeper with every passing minute. "Send sauce," he ordered, voice breaking. "We are struck, we are sinking." Through the open wound, the Atlantic poured in mercilessly. Furniture floated, luggage drifted. A grand painting came loose and vanished into the flood. From above, the fog reflected the eerie glow of emergency lights, pale green beams slicing through chaos. The camera moves wide, the Stockholm motionless in the fog, the Andrea Doria bleeding light into the sea, her once elegant hull now crippled and gasping. The ocean between them churns, silver, red, and black. Then, as the roar of water fades, a single haunting silence follows. Only the hiss of steam, only the crackle of shorted wires, only the whisper of the sea reclaiming what was once its own. In that silence, the enormity of the disaster settles. 46 souls gone in an instant, hundreds trapped below, thousands staring into the fog, unable to believe what just happened. The proud liner that had once symbolized beauty and triumph now hung in darkness, wounded beyond saving. The sea, moments ago calm, now glimmered with debris, lifeboats, luggage, fragments of dreams, all drifting together under the pale, indifferent moon.
Hold on tight!
Night still cloaked the Atlantic, but the fog had begun to lift, revealing the unthinkable. The once proud Andrea Doria now listed at a sharp angle, her lights flickering weakly against the Black Sea. Smoke drifted from her funnels, curling into the cold air. Over the radio, a broken voice repeated again and again, "Mayday, this is Andrea Doria, we are sinking." From miles away, ships answered. The Cape Anne, the Isle de France, the Stockholm, the very ship that had struck her, all turned toward the coordinates. The sea, moments ago indifferent, now filled with urgency. On the decks of the Andrea Doria, chaos had given way to heartbreak. Lifeboats hung useless on the starboard side, too high above the water to launch. Passengers huddled in groups, their faces pale and wet from salt and fear. Some whispered prayers in Italian, others simply stared into the night, waiting for help they could not yet see.
help!
Helicopter blades eventually
Is
cut through the
anybody
fog,
out there?
their searchlights sweeping the water like trembling hands. The piano score slows here, gentle, mournful, as the camera drifts over the debris, suitcases floating open, a child's toy spinning in the waves, lifebelts bobbing in the pale light. Every object tells a story left unfinished. Rescue ships approached cautiously through the wreckage. Crewmen shouted through megaphones, spotlights scanned the tilted decks. The Isle de France, a luxury liner herself, arrived first, her captain ordering all available boats lowered. "We will take them all," he said. Lifeboats rode through the dark, their oars striking sparks of phosphorescence on the water. Above, the Stockholm's crew worked tirelessly, pulling survivors from the freezing sea, men, women, children, their clothes torn and eyes wide with disbelief. Some were silent, others cried for family they could not find. The youngest survivor, 7-year-old Linda Morgan, was discovered alive, miraculously thrown from her bed during the collision and landing on the Stockholm's damaged bow. Newspapers would later call her the Miracle Girl. As dawn approached, the fog turned from gray to a sickly blue. The sea was calmer now, almost gentle, as if ashamed of what it had done. From the air, the Andrea Doria looked ghostly, half submerged, her elegant hull leaning heavily to one side. The sound of rescue helicopters mixed with the soft echo of waves. The melody of tragedy and salvation intertwined. Amid the wreckage, hope still floated. Dozens of lifeboats dotted the ocean, each carrying faces illuminated by the first light of morning. Survivors shivered beneath blankets, watching in silence as their ship, their home of the last 9 days, slowly sank behind them. In the final moments, Captain Calamai remained aboard, his uniform soaked, his eyes fixed on the tilting decks. He whispered to his officers, "She will not last long." Then, turning toward the horizon, he saluted the liner one last time. At 10:09 a.m., the Andrea Doria rolled onto her side and slipped beneath the surface. No explosion, no fire, only a long sigh of escaping air and a trail of bubbles that shimmered in the cold blue. The music fades to a single piano note. The screen cools to tones of silver and cyan, the cold blue of morning. For every life lost, dozens were saved. For every moment of terror, there was an act of courage. And as the sea calmed once more, the wreck of the Andrea Doria sank quietly into the deep, carrying with it a night the world would never forget. Morning broke softly over the Atlantic. The storm of noise, light, and fear was gone, replaced by a pale, endless calm. Seabirds circled above the empty waves where the Andrea Doria had vanished just hours earlier. The water was smooth again, but beneath that stillness, 46 souls rested with the ship that had once carried them in grace and pride. Decades later, divers would descend into the blue silence, their lights cutting through layers of darkness to reveal what remained. Grand staircases wrapped in coral, porcelain cups resting where they fell, the ghostly outline of a name still visible across her hull. Time had turned tragedy into monument. The music shifts to a faint ambient hum, waves, wind, a whisper of memory. The camera drifts slowly above the wreck, showing its shadow across the ocean floor. Then upward, sunlight breaking through the surface, the world above still unaware of the stories sleeping below. Beneath the calm surface, her story remains, fade to white. The logo of the channel appears, quiet, respectful, and still, as the final note lingers like the sea's eternal breath. The screen fades to black, leaving only the sound of slow, rhythmic waves. A soft voice returns, calm and reflective. Perhaps the ocean remembers more than it forgives. The words linger like a prayer carried by the tide.